The champagne glass trembled in Natasha Rivers' grip, as Manhattan's elite circulated through her gallery like sharks sensing blood. At 24, she had built an empire of carefully curated exhibitions, each one a fortress protecting the emotions she refused to feel. The white walls reflected harsh gallery lights, casting everything in stark relief, just like the barriers she had constructed around her heart. "You're doing that thing again," Diana whispered, materializing beside her with fresh champagne. Her best friend's warm eyes held concern. "The thing where you watch everyone like they're about to steal something precious." Natasha accepted the glass, her fingers automatically finding the thin silver chain at her throat. A nervous habit. That started 5 years ago, when her mother's heart stopped beating, when promises turned to ash and trust became a luxury she could no longer afford. "I'm ensuring quality control," Natasha replied, but the words tasted like practiced lies. The truth burned in her chest like swallowed fire. After watching her mother's soul shatter from a man's beautiful deceptions, Natasha had sworn an oath written in her own blood. Never again would she allow anyone close enough to destroy her. Art became her lover, paintings her confidants, sculptures her only safe harbor. "Miss Rivers?" A gallery assistant approached with nervous energy. "There's a gentleman asking specifically about the centerpiece. Says he must speak with you personally about Whispers of the Heart." The champagne turned to ice in Natasha's veins. The painting that had called to her soul from an obscure auction house, depicting a woman whose face held the perfect marriage of hope and devastation. Something about those painted eyes had felt like looking into a mirror of her deepest secrets. "Tell him I'll be right there," she said, draining her glass for courage she didn't possess. When Natasha approached the centerpiece, she found him. A man who stood before the painting with an intensity that made the air crackle with electricity. Tall and commanding, with dark hair that looked finger-combed and a suit that whispered of serious money. But his eyes stopped her breath. Deep green pools that held secrets and pain in equal measure. "Must be Natasha Rivers," he said without turning, his voice carrying an accent that made her pulse quicken. "I can see why this painting called to you." "And you are?" she asked, moving beside him while maintaining professional distance that felt like armor. He turned then, and the full force of his attention hit her like a physical blow. "Leonardo Castellano. Been searching for this painting for a very long time." Their handshake lasted a heartbeat too long, electricity jumping between their skin like lightning seeking ground. Natasha pulled away quickly, her heart hammering against her ribs. "What's your interest in the piece?" she asked, falling back on professional training to maintain composure. Leonardo's smile held sadness that seemed to echo in her bones. "Money isn't the issue. This painting has a connection to someone I lost." His eyes returned to the canvas. "Tell me, when you first saw this piece, what did you feel?" The question was so personal, so intimate, that her carefully constructed walls trembled. She never discussed emotional connections with clients. It was too revealing, too dangerous. "I felt," she began, then stopped, shaking her head. "I don't typically discuss personal reactions with potential buyers. I'm not just any buyer," he said quietly, those devastating green eyes piercing her defenses. "And this isn't just any painting. The woman in this portrait looks remarkably like you." Natasha's blood turned to winter in her veins. She had noticed the resemblance herself. The same dark hair, delicate bone structure, even the same shade of blue eyes. But she had dismissed it as coincidence. "Many people see resemblances in classical art," she said carefully. "This painting was completed 25 years ago," Leonardo interrupted gently, "by an artist named Carmen Rivers." The champagne. Glass exploded against the gallery floor like her world shattering. Several patrons turned, but Natasha barely noticed. Carmen Rivers had been her mother's name. "That's impossible," she whispered, studying the painting with new eyes. The signature in the corner, previously illegible, now seemed to form achingly familiar letters. Your mother was many things, Leonardo said softly, pulling out his phone. The photograph on the screen showed her mother, young and radiant, standing in what looked like an artist's studio. Natasha's knees nearly buckled. Everything she thought, she knew about her life was crumbling like ancient paper. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice breaking. "Really?" Leonardo's eyes held a storm of emotions as he stepped closer. "The man who loved your mother. I think I might be your father." The world tilted on its axis. Natasha gripped the wall for support as the gallery's ambient noise faded to white static. The faces of wealthy patrons blurred into impressionist smears of color, while her mind tried to process the impossibility of Leonardo's words. "That's not possible," she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. The photograph on his phone showed her mother with paint-stained fingers, eyes bright with artistic passion Natasha had never seen. "My mother was a high school teacher. She never mentioned art, never even drew without apologizing for her handwriting." Leonardo pocketed his phone, his movements careful as if approaching a wounded animal. "Carmen was protecting you. From me. From a world that destroyed her dreams the first time." "Stop." Natasha's professional mask cracked like ice over deep water. "Just stop talking. You walk into my gallery, claim to know my dead mother, suggest you might be my father, and expect me to believe fairy tales." But even as she spoke, pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Her mother's mysterious sadness during Natasha's childhood. The way Carmen would stare at paintings in museums, with longing that seemed to bleed from her pores. The sudden moves every few years, always leaving behind anything that might connect them to the past. "I have proof," Leonardo said gently. "Documents. Letters she wrote but never sent. DNA can confirm what your heart already knows." "My heart knows nothing," Natasha snapped. But her fingers found that silver chain again, twisting it until it bit into her skin. "My mother raised me alone. She told me my father was a mistake she refused to repeat." Pain flashed across Leonardo's features like lightning illuminating a storm-dark sky. "Carmen was 19 when we met. I was 25. Heir to a fortune built on art acquisition and real estate. She was the most talented artist I'd ever seen, and I was young enough to believe love could conquer the expectations of old money families." "Spare me the tragic romance," Natasha said, but her voice wavered. "My family had different plans. They offered Carmen money to disappear, a significant sum." Leonardo's jaw clenched. "She took it, vanished one night, leaving only a note saying she never wanted to see me again." The gallery spun around Natasha like a carousel of lies. "So, you're telling me my mother was bought off? That she sold her love for money?" "I thought so for 24 years, Leonardo admitted, his voice raw with old wounds, until I hired a private investigator 6 months ago. I discovered she was pregnant when she left. She used the money to start fresh, to protect you from a family that would have destroyed both your lives." Diana appeared at Natasha's elbow, her presence a lifeline in the chaos. "Tasha, honey, do you need me to call security?" "No," Natasha said, surprising herself. "Give us the room." Diana hesitated, then squeezed her hand before retreating. The gallery had emptied during their confrontation. Only the paintings remained as witnesses. "Why now?" Natasha asked, exhaustion replacing anger. "Why show up after she's dead, after I've built a life without you?" Leonardo's expression crumbled, revealing vulnerability that made him look younger, more human. "Because I'm dying." The words hung in the air like shattered glass. "Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. The doctors give me 6 months, maybe 8 if I'm lucky." He moved closer, and Natasha could see the slight hollowness in his cheeks, the way his expensive suit hung just slightly loose. "I wanted to meet you before I ran out of time. To tell you the truth your mother never could. To give you the inheritance that's rightfully yours." "I don't want your money," Natasha said automatically. It's not about money. Leonardo pulled out an envelope from his jacket, his hands trembling slightly. These are her letters. 24 years of words she never sent. She loved you more than anything in this world, Natasha. Every choice she made was to protect you from my family's poison. Natasha stared at the envelope like it might explode. And what do you want from me? Forgiveness? Absolution before you die? I want to know my daughter, Leonardo said simply. Even if it's only for a few months. Even if you hate me for every second of it. The raw honesty in his voice cracked something inside her chest. She thought of her mother's deathbed, the secrets Carmen had taken to her grave, the questions that had haunted Natasha for 5 years. One dinner, she heard herself say. Tomorrow night. You bring the letters, the proof, everything. And if I don't believe you, you walk away and never contact me again. Leonardo's smile was sunrise breaking through storm clouds. Thank you. As he turned to leave, Natasha called out, Why did you really come tonight? To the gallery opening? He paused at the doorway, his silhouette backlit by the city lights beyond. Because I needed to see if you had her fire, her passion for art, her ability to make beauty from pain. His voice dropped to a whisper. And you do. God help me. You're exactly like her. After he left, Natasha stood alone among her carefully curated walls, feeling them crumble around her like sandcastles before a tide. She pulled out her phone, scrolling to the only photo she had of her mother. Carmen's smile held secrets Natasha had never questioned. What did you do, Mom? She whispered to the image. What did you sacrifice? Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Tomorrow night. 8 p.m. I'll send the address. And Natasha, I'm sorry. For everything you never knew, she should block the number. Should call Diana and pour wine and laugh at the absurdity of a dying man claiming to be her father. But instead, she found herself staring at the painting, at the woman who wore her mother's face and her own features, caught forever in that moment between hope and heartbreak. The resemblance was undeniable. And terrifying, because if Leonardo was telling the truth, then everything Natasha thought she knew about her mother, about herself, about the walls she'd built around her heart, was built on lies, and the most dangerous part, a small, traitorous part of her wanted those lies to be true, wanted to believe her mother had loved someone once with the kind of passion that inspired masterpieces, wanted to know what it felt like to have a father, even one with an expiration date. Her phone buzzed again. This time an email notification from Leonardo's account with an attachment labeled Carmen Letter 01 PDF. Natasha's finger hovered over the file. Once she opened it, there would be no going back. The truth, whatever it was, would change everything. She clicked. The restaurant was the kind of place where silence cost more than sound. Private rooms with walls that absorbed secrets, where Manhattan's elite conducted business best kept from public eyes. Natasha arrived 15 minutes early, armor-plated in a black dress that said all business, no vulnerability. Leonardo was already there. He stood as she entered, and the gesture felt anachronistic, courtly. He looked different tonight. The expensive suit was gone, replaced by dark jeans and a cashmere sweater that made him look less like a corporate predator and more like a man carrying the weight of stolen years. You read the letter, he said. Not a question, all of them. Natasha's voice was steady, but her hands betrayed her, clutching her purse like a shield. She wrote to you every year on my birthday. Every single year. Leonardo's throat worked. I never received them. I know. She never sent them. Natasha sat, kneading the table between them as a barricade. But she loved you. God, she loved you so much it's in every word, every sentence. It's devastating. And you? Leonardo asked quietly, sitting across from her. What do you feel? Angry? Confused? Natasha met his eyes, and the connection crackled between them like a live wire. Curious, terrified, take your pick. A waiter appeared with wine neither of them had ordered. Leonardo must have arranged it. The burgundy caught the candlelight, blood red and beautiful. I had the DNA test done, Leonardo said, sliding a folder across the table. The results are inside. But I need you to know something before you open it. What? If it's positive, If I am your father, nothing changes unless you want it to." His eyes held hers with an intensity that made her chest tight. "I'm not here to claim ownership or rewrite history. I just wanted the truth, and to know you, even briefly." Natasha's fingers traced the folder's edge. "And if it's negative?" Something flickered across Leonardo's face. Relief? Disappointment? She couldn't tell. "Then I apologize for disrupting your life. And you never hear from me again." She opened the folder. The scientific jargon blurred together. But the conclusion was stark in bold letters. Probability of paternity, 0%. Subject A and Subject B share no biological parent-child relationship. The world stopped. "I don't understand," Natasha whispered, reading it again and again. "But the letters, the painting, your connection to my mother was real," Leonardo finished, his voice rough with emotion. "All of it was real. Carmen and I loved each other, but I'm not your biological father." The relief should have been immediate. Instead, Natasha felt something close to grief. Then who? "I don't know. Carmen was already pregnant when we met. She never told me." Leonardo's hands clenched on the table. "She let me believe you were mine. Let me fall in love with the idea of you before she disappeared." "That doesn't make sense." "Why would she?" "Because I told her I would love you as my own," Leonardo interrupted. "The night she told me she was pregnant, I proposed. I didn't care that the child wasn't biologically mine. I wanted to build a life with her, with you. But my family," his voice broke. "They found out. They told her they would destroy her, destroy the baby, destroy everything unless she took the money and ran." The restaurant's elegant ambiance felt suffocating. Natasha stood abruptly, needing air, needing space, needing anything but the intensity of Leonardo's gaze. "I need to leave." "Natasha, wait." But she was already moving, through the private room, through the restaurant's hushed elegance, out into the Manhattan night where taxi horns and street noise provided blessed anonymity. She made it 3 blocks before the tears came. Her phone buzzed incessantly. Diana. The gallery. Unknown numbers. She ignored them all, walking aimlessly through streets that blurred into watercolor smears. She ended up at her mother's grave. The cemetery was closed, but Natasha had never let rules stop her. She climbed the fence with the same determination that had built her gallery empire. "Who was he?" she asked the headstone, her voice raw. "Who was my real father? Why did you let Leonardo believe I was his? Why did you protect me from a family I didn't even belong to?" The stone offered no answers. "I met him, Mom. Leonardo. And the worst part?" Natasha laughed, the sound broken. "The absolute worst part is that I wanted it to be true. I wanted him to be my father, because he's dying, and he's kind, and he loved you with the kind of passion you painted into that portrait. And I wanted to know what it felt like to have that, even for 6 months. Natasha." She spun. Leonardo stood at the cemetery entrance, his chest heaving like he'd run the entire way. "How did you?" "Diana told me where your mother was buried. I took a chance." He climbed the fence with surprising agility for a man with cancer. "I'm sorry. For everything. For disrupting your life. For not being your father. For stop apologizing," Natasha said, and something in her voice made him freeze. They stood there 10 feet apart, with her mother's grave between them, and the city lights painting shadows across the cemetery stones. "The DNA test changes nothing," Natasha said slowly, working through the words as she spoke them. "You loved my mother. She loved you. You wanted to be my father. That's more than biology. What are you saying?" Natasha moved closer, drawn by something she didn't want to name. "I'm saying maybe we don't let the test define us. Maybe we figure out what this is, whatever this is, on our own terms." Leonardo's eyes searched hers in the darkness. That's a dangerous proposition. Why? But Natasha already knew, could feel it in the way her pulse quickened when he looked at her. In the magnetic pull that had nothing to do with paternity and everything to do with something far more complicated. "Because I'm 25 years older than you. Because I'm dying. Because I loved your mother." Leonardo's voice dropped. "And because when I look at you, I don't see her. I see someone entirely different. Someone who makes me forget all the reasons I should walk away." The air between them crackled with dangerous electricity. "You should walk away," Natasha whispered. even as she moved closer. I should, Leonardo agreed, closing the distance. They stood inches apart now, close enough that Natasha could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes, could smell cedar and something darker, more complex. This is wrong, she said. Completely, he agreed. We just met, 48 hours ago. You're sick, dying. This can't happen. No, Leonardo said softly, his hand coming up to cup her face with heartbreaking gentleness. It can't. But when their lips met, the world caught fire. The kiss was nothing like Natasha expected. Not gentle or tentative, but consuming, desperate. Like two people drowning and finding air in each other's breath. Leonardo's hands tangled in her hair and she pressed closer, needing to erase the space between them, needing to forget every logical reason this was insane. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Natasha's carefully constructed walls lay in ruins around her. This is crazy, she whispered against his mouth. Certifiably, Leonardo agreed, kissing her again. A flashlight beam cut through the darkness. Cemetery security. Hey, you can't be here. They broke apart, laughing like teenagers caught making out. Leonardo grabbed her hand and they ran through the cemetery, jumping graves and dodging monuments, until they tumbled over the fence onto the sidewalk beyond. Natasha leaned against the iron bars, her heart hammering, feeling more alive than she had in 5 years. Leonardo stood close, his hand still holding hers, his eyes dark with promise and warnings. What now? She asked. Now, Leonardo said, his thumb tracing circles on her palm that sent electricity up her arm. We make every moment count. You have 6 months. Then we have 6 months. Natasha should say no. Should recognize this as grief, as loneliness, as a desperate attempt to connect with her dead mother through the man who loved Carmen first. Instead, she kissed him again. And in that moment, standing on a Manhattan sidewalk at midnight, with a dying man who wasn't her father, but felt like destiny anyway, Natasha Rivers made a choice that would either save her or destroy her. Completely. 6 months, she agreed. Leonardo's smile was equal parts triumph and sorrow. Let's make them. Legendary, neither of them saw the figure, watching from across the street, or the camera phone capturing every moment, or the email being sent to an address that would change everything. Found him. And he's not alone, awaiting instructions. 3 weeks passed like a fever dream. Leonardo and Natasha existed in a stolen bubble of time. Every moment weighted with the knowledge of an ending they couldn't prevent. He took her to private auctions in Paris. She showed him the hidden art studios where her mother had once painted. They made love in penthouses overlooking the city, and in tiny galleries after hours, pressed against walls that held the ghosts of Carmen's unfulfilled dreams. Natasha felt herself cracking open, all the careful armor she'd built dissolving under Leonardo's touch. He made her feel alive in ways that terrified her, made her believe in the kind of love her mother had painted into that portrait. Diana's warnings became background noise. "You're falling for him," her best friend said over coffee, concern etched in every line of her face. "Tasha, he's dying, and you barely know him." "I know enough," Natasha replied, but the words felt hollow even to her own ears. "Do you? Because I did some digging." Diana pushed a folder across the table. Leonardo Castellano isn't just some wealthy art collector. His family is old money, connected to politicians, to corporations, to the kind of power that destroys people who get in their way. He's not his family, isn't he? Diana's eyes held pity. His father is Victor Castellano. The Victor Castellano, the man who just announced a run for Senate. And there are rumors, Tasha, about what Victor's willing to do to protect his reputation. Natasha pushed the folder away, unwilling to let reality contaminate the perfect illusion she'd built. Leonardo has 6 months to live. Whatever his family did in the past doesn't matter now. Unless it does, Diana said softly. Unless this whole thing is a setup. Think about it. He shows up right when his father announces a Senate campaign, claims to have loved your mother, gets you emotionally invested right before. Stop. Natasha stood, anger flaring. You don't know him like I do. That's what I'm afraid of. That night, Natasha went to Leonardo's penthouse unannounced. She still had the key he'd given her, a symbol of trust that now felt heavy in her palm. The apartment was dark except for light spilling from his study. She heard voices. "The girl is becoming a problem, Leo." Natasha froze in the hallway. The voice was older, commanding, familiar from news broadcasts. Victor Castellano, Leonardo's father. "She's not a problem," Leonardo replied, his voice tight. "Leave her out of this. We had an agreement. You do your part. Ensure Carmen's daughter is contained, and we protect your legacy. But instead, you're sleeping with her, making a spectacle?" Natasha's blood turned to ice. "That wasn't the plan," Leonardo said, and something in his tone made her heart crack. It was supposed to be simple. Find her, establish a connection, make sure she doesn't have any of Carmen's paintings that could surface during the campaign. "I didn't expect to fall for her?" Victor's laugh was cruel. "You always were weak when it came to the Rivers women. Carmen played you for a fool 25 years ago, and now her daughter is doing the same. That's not true, isn't it? Or maybe you're the one playing her. Either way, it ends now. The letters you showed her. The DNA test all manufactured. But she doesn't know that, does she?" The world tilted violently. Natasha pressed her hand against the wall for support. "The DNA test was real," Leonardo said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Was it? Or did you tell yourself that to justify the deception? Either way, it's done. We've secured all of Carmen's remaining paintings. Nothing can connect your mother's affair to our family now." The girl served her purpose. "My mother," Natasha breathed. The words too quiet to be heard but explosive enough to shatter her completely. "Carmen wasn't my lover," Leonardo said, and Natasha could hear the defeat in his voice. "She was my mother's. Your mother was the product of that affair, which makes you his granddaughter," Victor finished. "Which is why you were perfect for this job. A family connection, but distant enough to be deniable. You were supposed to neutralize the threat, not get emotionally compromised." Natasha's legs buckled. She caught herself against the doorframe, bile rising in her throat. Everything was a lie. The romance, the DNA test, the letters. Leonardo had known who she was from the beginning, had sought her out not from love, but as a mission to protect his father's Senate campaign. And she had fallen for it, fallen for him, opened herself up completely while he systematically dismantled every defense she had. "Get rid of her," Victor said coldly. "Pay her off like we did Carmen. These women always have a price." "No." Leonardo's voice was sharp. "I won't do that to her. She deserves the truth." "The truth?" Victor laughed. "The truth is you used her. The truth is every moment between you was calculated. The truth will destroy her, which is exactly why she can never know." Natasha didn't wait to hear more. She ran, her heels echoing in the marble hallway, down the private elevator, out into the Manhattan night that suddenly felt suffocating. Her phone buzzed. Leonardo. She threw it into a trash can without breaking stride. She made it to Diana's apartment before the sobs came, violent and unstoppable. Diana held her without questions until Natasha could finally speak. "You were right," she whispered. "About everything. What happened?" Natasha told her. All of it. The conversation she'd overheard. The revelation about her grandmother's affair. The calculated seduction that she'd mistaken for destiny. "I'm calling the police," Diana said, reaching for her phone. "And tell them what? That a man pretended to have feelings for me? That's not illegal. It's just cruel." Natasha laughed, the sound broken. "The worst part is I still love him. After everything, I still—" A knock on the door interrupted, sharp, urgent. "Don't answer it," Diana warned. But Natasha already knew who it was, could feel Leonardo's presence through the door like a physical weight. "Natasha, please, let me explain." She opened the door before Diana could stop her. Leonardo stood there, disheveled, his eyes wild with something that looked like genuine panic. "How much did you hear?" he asked. "Enough." Her voice was stone. "Was any of it real? The letters? The cancer?" Leonardo flinched. "The cancer is real. I have maybe 4 months left, not 6. Everything else." He ran a hand through his hair. "The DNA test was manufactured. The letters were real, but they were from my mother to Carmen, not me. I found them after my mother died. That's how I learned about you. And the seduction, the romance, The promises? That, Leonardo stepped closer, and Natasha saw real agony in his face. That wasn't supposed to happen. I was supposed to find you, ensure you had no paintings that could hurt my father's campaign, and disappear. But then I met you, and you were brilliant and broken and beautiful, and I fell in love with your mission. Natasha's voice cracked. Congratulations. You succeeded. I trusted you. I let you in. I broke every rule I made to protect myself because I thought she couldn't finish. I love you, Leonardo said desperately. That's the truth. Everything else was manipulation, but what I feel for you is real. How am I supposed to believe anything you say? You're not. Leonardo's shoulders sagged. But I need to tell you the rest. About why my father is so desperate to bury this connection to your family. I don't care. You should. Because Carmen didn't just have an affair with my mother. She discovered something about my family. Something that could destroy the Castellano empire. And my father thinks you might have that information. Natasha stared at him, her mind reeling. What information? I don't know. But whatever it is, my father is willing to kill to keep it buried. And you, Natasha? Leonardo's eyes held genuine fear. You're in danger. Real danger. Not from me, but from people who make me look like a saint. Diana stepped forward, her voice ice. Get out! Now! Leonardo didn't move, his eyes locked on Natasha. I have 4 months to live, maybe less, and I plan to spend every second of it protecting you from the family I should have destroyed years ago. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I'm asking for the chance to make this right. How? Natasha asked. How do you make right a betrayal this complete? Leonardo pulled out a key. Not to his penthouse, something older, more worn. This is to a safety deposit box. Inside is everything I know about what Carmen discovered, about what my family did to cover it up, about the real reason they paid her to disappear. It's yours. Use it however you want. Destroy my family. Destroy me. I don't care anymore. He placed the key on Diana's coffee table, then turned to leave. Leonardo, Natasha called out, her voice barely above a whisper. He paused, hope flickering in his eyes. If you really love me, you'll stay away. You'll let me decide what to do with this information without your influence, without your manipulation. If you truly want to make this right, you'll disappear. The hope died. Leonardo nodded once, then walked out of the apartment, out of her life, leaving behind only a key and the wreckage of everything they could have been. After the door closed, Natasha stared at the key like it might explode. What are you going to do? Diana asked softly. I'm going to find out what my mother died protecting. And then, Natasha picked up the key, her hand steady despite the chaos in her heart. Then I'm going to burn their empire to the ground. But first, she had to decide if she believed Leonardo's final confession. If his love was real, or just another layer of a deception so complete she'd never find solid ground again. Outside, in a black sedan parked across the street, Victor Castellano watched Leonardo walk away from the apartment building. He dialed a number, his expression cold. The son has become a liability, and the girl knows too much. Handle them both. Make it look like an accident. What about the contents of the deposit box? Victor smiled, an expression devoid of warmth. There is no deposit box. That's another one of Leonardo's lies. But she doesn't know that yet. Let her chase ghosts while we clean up this mess permanently. He ended the call, then leaned back in his seat, confident that by morning, both problems would be solved. What he didn't know was that Natasha had already made copies of everything. Or that Carmen's final painting, the one that held the darkest secret of all, was hanging in Natasha's private office, hidden in plain sight among dozens of other works. Or that Leonardo's love, manufactured or not, had just set in motion a chain of events that would either save them both or destroy everything the Castellano family had built. The game was far from over. It was only just beginning. The safety deposit box was empty except for a single photograph. Carmen, young and pregnant, standing beside an older woman who had Leonardo's eyes. On the back, written in her mother's handwriting, "The truth is in the last painting. Destroy it or destroy them. Your choice, my love." Natasha stood in the bank vault, the photograph trembling in her hands. Leonardo had lied about the contents, but the key was real, which meant some part of his story was true. But which part? Her phone buzzed. Diana, turn on the news. Now. Natasha's blood went cold as she pulled up the live feed. Breaking news scrolled across the bottom. Leonardo Castellano, son of Senate candidate Victor Castellano, found unconscious in his penthouse. Suspected overdose. Condition critical. She was moving before conscious thought caught up. Out of the bank, into a taxi, through Manhattan traffic that felt like molasses. The hospital emergency room was chaos. Security blocked the private wing where they'd taken Leonardo. Family only, the guard said. I'm his daughter, Natasha lied, and something in her voice must have been convincing because he stepped aside. Leonardo looked like a ghost against white hospital sheets. Tubes and wires connected him to machines that beeped steadily, marking time that was running out. An older man stood by the window, his back to her. Victor Castellano. You have nerve showing up here, he said without turning. Though I suppose we have you to thank for this. My son's apparent suicide attempt coinciding with his sudden conscience. Convenient timing. This wasn't suicide, Natasha said quietly. You tried to kill him. Victor turned and Natasha saw where Leonardo got his eyes. Except Victor's held nothing but calculation. That's a serious accusation. One you can't prove, can't I? Natasha held up her phone, showing the recording she'd made of Victor's conversation with Leonardo. The one she'd captured before running that night. Your words. Your confession. Your admission that you manufactured evidence, manipulated your dying son, and threatened to kill anyone who got in your way. Victor's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Fear. That recording is inadmissible in court. Obtained illegally. I don't care about court, Natasha said. I care about the truth. And the press. And the voters who deserve to know what kind of man wants to represent them. You release that, you destroy Leonardo too. Everything he's worked for, his reputation, his legacy. He becomes the son who betrayed his family, who fell for a mark, who died in shame. Natasha moved closer to Leonardo's bedside, her hand finding his. Still warm. Still fighting. Or, Victor continued, you give me that recording, take a generous settlement and disappear. Leonardo gets to die with his dignity intact. You get to live without my family hunting you. Everyone wins. Except Carmen. Except my grandmother. Except everyone your family has destroyed. Victor's smile was cold. You're just like your mother. Self-righteous, naive, thinking love and truth matter more than power. How did that work out for her? Something inside Natasha snapped. She thought of her mother's wasted talent, the paintings never shown, the love destroyed by greed and manipulation. She thought of Leonardo, dying because he'd chosen truth over family loyalty, and she made a choice. You want this recording? She held up her phone. Come get it, she ran, through the hospital corridors, Victor's security close behind. She burst into a stairwell, taking steps 3 at a time, her heels abandoned somewhere behind her. Up, always up, until she crashed through the roof access door. Manhattan sprawled below, beautiful and indifferent. Victor and 2 security guards emerged seconds later. There's nowhere to go, Victor said. Give me the phone. Natasha held it over the edge of the building, wind whipping her hair around her face. You're right. There's nowhere to go. But you know what? I sent copies. To every major news outlet. To the police. To the FBI. Even if you destroy this phone, even if you destroy me, the truth is already out there. By morning, your campaign is finished. Your family's reputation is ruined. Everything you've built on lies and violence will crumble. Victor's face contorted with rage. Kill her. Make it look like she jumped. The security guards moved forward. Natasha's heart hammered, but she stood her ground. There's one other thing you should know, she said. The painting you were so desperate to find, the one Carmen supposedly hid secrets in, I know where it is. Victor froze. And before you kill me, you might want to know that I scheduled it to be delivered to the Times art critic tomorrow morning, along with documentation proving it was painted by Leonardo's mother, your wife. The woman you've spent decades pretending was a saint. Want to guess what image she captured? What moment she witnessed that she needed to preserve? The color drained from Victor's face. That painting doesn't exist, doesn't it? Carmen was protecting your secret, Victor. Not from the world, from Leonardo, because the painting shows something that would have destroyed him. Something about how his mother really died. Something you did, It was a bluff. Natasha had no idea what was in Carmen's final painting, but the terror in Victor's eyes told her she'd struck gold. "The painting," Victor said, his voice shaking. "Where is it? Make a deal with me. Confess everything. Let Leonardo die in peace knowing the truth. Step down from your campaign. Dismantle the empire you built on murder and manipulation. Do that, and the painting never surfaces. The secret dies with you." "And if I refuse?" Natasha smiled, and it was her mother's smile. Fierce, unafraid. "Then everyone learns what you did to your wife, and to Leonardo's real father. Because that's what the painting shows, isn't it? The truth about Leonardo's parentage. The reason you've been so desperate to control him. To keep him close but powerless. He's not your biological son. Never was." Victor lunged for her. Natasha stepped back, her heels at the roof's edge. Nothing but air and 40 stories behind her. "Shoot her," Victor screamed. "Kill her now." "Do it," Natasha said calmly. "Make me a martyr. Let the recording and the painting and every secret you've buried come out in the investigation. Or walk away. Your choice." Time crystallized. The security guard's hand on his weapon. Victor's face twisted with rage and calculation. The wind carrying the sounds of the city that never stopped. Never cared. Never noticed when people shattered. Then a voice from the roof access door. "Father, stop." Leonardo stood there, supported by Diana, his hospital gown flapping in the wind. He looked like death walking, but his eyes were clear. "It's over," Leonardo said. "I sent the files. All of them. Everything I've been collecting for years about your crimes. It's all ready with the authorities. You're finished." Victor stared at his son like looking at a stranger. "I'm your father." "No," Leonardo said softly. "You're the man who murdered my real father. The man who kept my mother prisoner. The man who's been poisoning me for months, making sure I died on your timeline instead of the cancer's." Natasha gasped. "The cancer is real, but it's been accelerated by the drugs he's been putting in my medication. I figured it out 3 days ago. Took samples, had them tested." Leonardo moved closer, each step an obvious effort. "You couldn't risk me living long enough to discover the truth about you. About my real father. About everything." "You're delusional," Victor said, but his voice lacked conviction. "The medications are making you paranoid. The FBI will sort that out. They're downstairs now. Did you really think I'd let Natasha face you alone? That I wouldn't prepare for this moment?" Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Victor looked at his son, at Natasha, at the security guards who were slowly backing away from their employer. His empire crumbling in real time. "You've destroyed everything," Victor said to Leonardo. "For what? A girl you barely know? A truth that will make you a laughingstock?" "For freedom," Leonardo replied. "For my mother. For Carmen. For every person you've crushed under the weight of your ambition." He looked at Natasha, and his eyes held love so pure it hurt. And yes, for her. Because she's worth more than all of it. Federal agents burst onto the roof. Victor Castellano was arrested without resistance, his face blank with shock. The security guards were detained, and suddenly it was just Natasha and Leonardo and Diana, standing in the wreckage of a family dynasty. "You came," Natasha whispered to Leonardo. "Always," he said, then collapsed. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of hospital rooms and depositions. Leonardo's cancer, no longer artificially accelerated, stabilized. Not a cure, but a reprieve. 6 months became 8. Maybe 10. Victor Castellano faced multiple charges. His campaign imploded. The Castellano empire crumbled as investigators uncovered decades of crimes, and the painting Carmen's final masterpiece was never found. Because it didn't exist. It had been Natasha's perfect bluff, and Victor had fallen for it completely. On a cold November morning, Natasha sat beside Leonardo's hospital bed, their hands intertwined. "I'm still angry with you," she said, "for the lies, for the manipulation, for making me trust when I'd sworn never to trust again." "I know," Leonardo said. "I'll spend whatever time I have left earning your forgiveness. You might not have enough time for that. Then I'll die trying." Natasha looked at this man who had destroyed her and saved her in equal measure. This man who wasn't her father, wasn't her lover in the beginning, but had become something she couldn't define, something that transcended simple categories. "My mother's last letter," she said quietly. The one the investigators found in her things after she died. Do you want to know what it said? Leonardo nodded. Natasha pulled out the letter, worn from repeated readings. Natasha, my darling girl, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And you've probably met Leonardo. I asked him to find you, to protect you from Victor, to help you navigate the truth I was too coward to tell you myself. Leonardo is not your father, but he loved me, and he will love you. Trust him, even when it seems impossible, especially then. The Castellanos destroy everything they touch except Leonardo. He's different. He's good, and he's dying. Be his family when he has none. Be his hope when the cancer takes everything else. And know that every choice I made was to keep you safe, to keep you free, to give you the life I couldn't have. Love recklessly, my darling. It's the only revenge that matters. Tears streamed down Leonardo's face. She knew, he whispered. About the cancer. About my father's plans. About everything. And she asked me to protect you anyway. She did. Natasha wiped her own tears. Which means the lies you told, the role you played, some of it was her design. Her final masterpiece wasn't a painting. It was this, us, finding each other, destroying the family that destroyed her. And now? Leonardo asked. What happens now? Natasha leaned forward, pressing her forehead to his. Now we live, however long we have. We live deliberately. We love recklessly. We turn pain into beauty, just like she did, just like she taught us both. I don't deserve you. You don't. But you're what I choose anyway. Their kiss was soft, tentative, tasting of tears and truth and time running out. But it was real. Finally, devastatingly real. 6 months later, Leonardo died with Natasha holding his hand. He went peacefully, his final words a whisper. Thank you for teaching me how to live. Natasha scattered his ashes at the gallery, beneath the painting that started everything. The one her mother had created in secret, hiding a truth that needed to surface. She never remarried. Never loved anyone else with that same intensity. But she built an empire on the ruins of the Castellano fortune, funding artists who had been silenced, supporting women escaping dangerous situations, creating beauty from ashes. And sometimes late at night, she would stand before her mother's painting and whisper, "We did it, Mom. We survived. We loved. We won." Diana found her there one evening, 5 years later, still talking to the portrait. "Do you miss him?" Diana asked. "Every day," Natasha admitted. "But I'm grateful too, for the time we had, for the truth we fought for learning that love doesn't have to be perfect to be real." Your mother would be proud. I think she already knew how it would end, Natasha said, smiling through tears. I think she painted it all. The pain, the passion, the sacrifice, the survival. She captured it in whispers of the heart and waited for us to understand. She touched the silver chain at her throat. Her mother's, then hers. Now a talisman of everything survived and everything sacrificed. Love recklessly, she whispered. Carmen's final commandment, Leonardo's final gift. It was enough, it was everything. The end,